As guitar players, our tone is one of the most important things that we have. And on this channel, we talk a lot about guitar tone, how to get good tone with your playing, what gear to use. But one thing we haven't touched on very much so far in the history of this channel is one of the most crucial elements of your guitar's sound. And it actually isn't the guitar or the amp or the player, it's microphones. Microphone choice and placement is arguably one of the biggest contributing factors to good guitar tone, especially on a gig or in a session. Today we're going to be comparing some of the most popular dynamic mics for guitar amps, as well as some great options from the condenser world and even a ribbon mic. So if you're new to microphones and you're looking for your first mic to start recording yourself with, or you want to add something to your extensive mic collection, this is going to be a great video for you to check out. Okay, so let's talk through the signal flow. In an effort to keep this as scientific as possible, I'm going to keep things simple, controlling as many variables as I can. So the guitar I'm using today is my Novo Ceres T. It's a Tele style guitar. The amp we're using today is the Port City Pearl. This is a 6L6 50 watt, totally clean pedal platform amp. Not a ton of coloration or character with this thing. It's got its matching 212 cabinet loaded with Celestion Vintage 30s. From there, I'm going straight into Logic. So a pretty straight ahead setup today. Now, to control the variable of playing, I'm only going to play through the progression one time and use a looper pedal to play the same take for each microphone. So that should eliminate most of the variables other than the mics themselves. With all that out of the way, let's get started. We're going to start with the Shure SM57. Okay, so that was the dynamic mics. Let's talk a little bit more about them individually, starting with the SM57. I mean, this thing is the industry standard for a reason. They're rock solid, they sound great, they work well with pretty much any and every guitar amp you can stick this thing in front of. They have a little bit of that upper mid-range bite, which works incredibly well for distorted guitars, overdriven amps. They sit well in a mix. That's why every studio in the world has these. If you're just starting out and looking for your very first mic to buy, I would probably start with the SM57. They're about $100 brand new. You can find them used all over the place for even less. They're rock solid. You can record a guitar amp and then unplug it and hammer a nail with it if you wanted to. But you can use these for everything. They sound great on vocals. They sound great on drums, acoustic guitars, pianos. This is really the working man's mic right here. Next up is the Blue Encore 100i. Now, Blue sent a couple of mics out to me a few weeks ago to try out, this being one of them, and I haven't put this in front of an amp until just now, and I have to say I'm pretty impressed at how different it sounded to the 57. My initial thought with the Encore 100i was that this is Blue's take on a 57, so it's going to be pretty close, not much difference, but I was actually really surprised. This has a lot more low end, low mid range to it than the 57 does, which to my ear, I think this would work well on a brighter amp and a brighter speaker. So something like an AC30 with an Alnico speaker in it, something that's really glassy and chimey. Having that extra bottom end filling in that top end that the amp naturally gives off could be really good. Again, though, same kind of thing as the 57. Really versatile, similar style construction. They'd work great on vocals, on drums, snare drum, top and bottom. This is a solid little mic. All right, next up is the Sennheiser MD 421-2. Now we're starting to step up a little bit in price here. The 421s go for around $250, $275 on the used market and around $380 new. But these are another industry standard mic that you'll see in just about every recording studio and on a lot of live stages all over the world. These are really commonly used on drums for toms and snare drums, but they also work really well on guitar cabinets, especially overdriven, heavier guitar tones. If you've been around the channel for a while, you've heard this mic on just about every video I've put up. In my ISO box back there, I have my divided by 13 cabinet mic'd up with an SM57 and an MD 421 because these two mics complement each other really well. So this would be a great mic if you already have something like a 57, but you want to add to it to blend with. Maybe you're trying to mic two speakers or you want more than one mic on the same source. The 421 is a great next option for guitar players. Next up, we have the Shure SM7B. This is a broadcast microphone. It was originally designed for use in radio stations, and that's primarily where it's used a lot. But like the 57, like the 421, you are sure to find an SM7 in just about every single recording studio out there. These are incredible mics, especially on vocals, which is obviously what they were designed for, but they work great on snare drums, guitar cabinets, a whole host of other things. If you want some interesting reading, Google some of the most famous records that the SM7 has been used on as a vocal mic. The list is impressive. Now we are stepping up a little bit in price here, but not much. You're still under $500 for a brand new one. These go for about $399 US. I picked this one up used though. I spent about $300 about maybe 4 years ago on it. So if you want to do more than just record guitars, maybe you are a vocalist or a singer-songwriter and you want to record your voice and maybe an acoustic instrument or two, the SM7B is the one mic to have. If you can only have one microphone to do everything, the Shure SM7 is your go-to. And last up, and most certainly least for the dynamic microphones, is the Sennheiser E609. I don't like these mics at all. I bought a pair of these. These were actually the first microphones I ever bought way back in the day when I was first getting into recording guitars. And I bought them because I liked their main selling point, which is you can hang them from the XLR cable. You don't actually need a stand to mic your guitar amps with these. You can just drape it over the cabinet and let it hang in front of the speaker. That's really, in my opinion, the only redeeming quality about these microphones. Now again, I'm a Sennheiser fan. The MD421, as I just said, is one of my favorite microphones of all time. But in this lineup, Sennheiser makes one of my favorite mics and my least favorite mic. I don't like the 609 because it sounds tinny and cheap to me. It accentuates all of the wrong frequencies for my ear when I'm recording guitars. A lot of upper mid-range. They tend to sound kind of honk-ish. I have used these to record other things though, like hi-hats. They work well as a hi-hat mic. These are priced about the same as a 57. My advice, take that $100 and buy a 57 instead of a 609. But that's just my 2 cents. I'm sure there's people here that love these mics. If you do, let me know in the comments down below. Next, we're going to move on to the condenser mics, starting with the Aventone CV12. Okay, so the first mic in that shootout was the Aventone CV12. This is a clone of a C12 tube condenser microphone. I think this is another mic similar to the SM7 in that if you want one mic to kind of do a little bit of everything, something like the CV12 is a great option. Maybe you have a couple of dynamic mics already and you're looking to get into a good large diaphragm condenser, a little bit different flavor, or to record different types of stuff. The CV12 is a really good option. It's got a 6072 tube in it, comes with a power supply that has a switch on the front where you can switch between one of 9 different polar patterns, which is really cool. You have a 10 dB pad on the front, as well as a high pass filter, which rolls off at about 80 Hertz. The cool thing about getting into a condenser mic is it's a different sound than a dynamic mic. It allows you to do some different things. With the different polar patterns, you can switch to do omni recording and use it as a room mic, or if you're recording multiple people at once, you can do figure 8 patterns or somewhere in between with this mic. Now, you do have to be a little bit more careful when you're recording guitar amps with large diaphragm condensers, because when you're recording at higher volumes, these can clip a little bit easier. They can overload the capsules easier than dynamic mics. All right, so next up on the list was the Neumann U87 AI. This is a modern reissue from Neumann of the classic U87 mic. This thing is another industry standard. Now, this is the modern reissue. It does sound a little bit different than vintage 87s that I've used and heard. The vintage ones, to my ear, tend to have a little bit sweeter top end, whereas this one is a little bit brighter and a little more airy on the top end than the vintage ones. So if you're just starting out, I probably would steer clear of the U87 strictly because of the price. These are expensive microphones. One thing I hope you pick up in this video is there's not exactly a direct correlation between value and sound quality. You should notice that each one of these microphones has a different sonic character, one not necessarily being better or worse than the other, with the exception of the 609. So if you're new to this, don't be discouraged if you only have $100 to spend. You don't need to go out and spend almost $2,500 on something like a Neumann U87. Now, as you get deeper into this and you start to record more and you want to add to your mic collection, this is a great mic to have. I'm really lucky, really privileged to own this microphone. I really like it. So next up is the Blue Baby Bottle SL. This is another mic that Blue sent out to me a few weeks ago to start using on some videos. And I think this is the warmest mic that I tested today. Now, much like the Aventone CV12, I think this is another really good option if you're looking to get into the large diaphragm condenser world and you want one mic to do a little bit of everything. This one has some really great features like a 20 dB pad instead of a 10 dB pad. I also really like the spherical design of this capsule. The reason being it's really easy to know exactly where you're placing the capsule on the speaker. And this one's also priced $100 cheaper than the Aventone CV12. This one comes in at $400 US brand new. It comes with a great shock mount, a nice wooden box. Now, this is a little bit darker than the two condensers we've tested so far. It has more bottom end, more low mid range, which again, it's a color, so you have to know that going into it. In fact, I think I'm gonna stick this in the ISO box for the next few weeks, and you guys can let me know what you think of the guitar tones using this microphone. And the last mic in our shootout today was the Sterling Audio ST170 ribbon microphone. Now, I've never owned a ribbon and I wanted to have a ribbon in the shootout today, and I called around Atlanta to some friends of mine. Nobody had a ribbon mic available for me to use in the video, so I ran down to Guitar Center and bought this. I wanted to get my hands on something like a Cascade Fathead or a Royer R121. Both are incredible ribbon mics, especially the 121, but that's $1,200 that I don't have to spend right now. I spent $150 on this morning, and I'm taking it back for a few reasons. One, I don't think this mic sounds particularly great. I use ribbon mics a lot. One of the main churches that I play at from time to time here in Atlanta, North Point Church, their main guitar setup is a Royer R121 and an SM57. That is my favorite guitar microphone combo I've ever used. So I wanted this to be close enough to the 121, and it's just not in the same ballpark. As you probably heard in the video, this is a really dark microphone. There's not a lot of high-end information here, especially comparing it to something like the 57 you heard earlier. It's really boomy, it's got a lot of low mid-range, a lot of mud, and unlike the condensers that we were looking at a second ago, this doesn't have a high-pass filter or a pad. And honestly, if it weren't for this, as soon as I pulled it out of the case, there's a piece of metal rattling around inside the body of the microphone. Now, surprisingly enough, this is the second Sterling microphone I've bought that has had this problem. So obviously there is some kind of production issue with these because this is a recurring problem for me. I talked to my friend Ian, who has a couple of these microphones. He said the same thing. A couple of his Sterlings have metal floating around inside of them. So, you know, for me, I'm just not cool with keeping that. I'm gonna take this back to Guitar Center and get my money back and probably pick up a Fathead off of Reverb. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed the shootout. Let me know in the comments section which was your favorite mic. And if you own any of these mics, let me know how you like to use them. Do you like to pair them with any other mics, with any specific speakers or guitar amps? Let me know in the comments down below. Every mic that we talked about today will be linked in the description box, so if you want to find out more information or pick one up for yourself, you can do that through those links down below as well. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. It really helps the channel out. And you can also find a link to the Rhett Shull live channel down below as well, where I'm doing live streams every week. If you're a Kemper user, I have my own Kemper profiles that I just released of my own personal amps over here. You can find those on my website linked below as well. Anyways, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Rhett Shull, and remember, there is no plan B.